Retro Hangover is supported via Patreon by listeners like you. We would especially like to thank patrons Lyle McCarnes, Tony G, Tom the Superhero, Stud Still Smash the Milkman, Raging Demon, Mast Keaton, Lucas from Game Over Hell, Ozzy Garcia, JC, Megan Caruso, Rick Firestone, Dave Jackson, Jenny E, Retro Overdrive, Soha the Emperor, Storm Beagle, Matt aka Stormageddon, Pete Ross and Van Fernal from Super Garbage Day, Randall Quiggle, Keith Gasper, the Retro Vixen, Eric Guess, Nomad from the Retro Wildlands podcast, Ash Events, Alan Bingham, Mike the Rep from Backbreaker Gaming, Ryan Player One, Alt, Low5 Alex, Renner Dreaming, Omi, Makeshift Money, and Sega Boy 7. Your continued engagement and generous donations are deeply appreciated. Open your ears and crack some beers. You are listening to Retro Hangover. And hello, retro and classic gamers. Welcome to the podcast where we have hanging harvests, holding halos, hailing heels. This is Retro Hangover. I am your host today, Chris Copleen, with special guest, Super Dave from Treehouse Anime Club and the Anime Field Guide. By the way, today we do not have Shane. Dick Dragon Selton! He couldn't make it here tonight. I could have held that longer. Gotta make it longer for his absence, but unfortunately he could not. I said tonight, like you're all listening to this tonight. Yeah, he couldn't make it on this episode. Just kind of out of sorts for the day, but said that go ahead, record that episode. It's going to be a riveting discussion, he was sure, and I know it will be because, as I already said, I'm joined by Super Dave, and I am happy to have you on the show here to talk some Harvest Moon. How are you doing?
I am feeling good as well. I had a bit of a close call, but we are here. We are live and happy to record.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm ready to talk about some farming games.
Got to get that farming in. Everyone loves to farm. Maybe, I don't know. I think everyone does. I'll get to why I believe that at the very end of the episode. I think this game is bigger than people give it credit for. I really do. I think this Harvest Moon series is huge. Don't understand why it doesn't get more coverage. But let's just get right into the meat of what we do here at Retro Hangover and talk about the games that we have been playing lately. I guess that's not really the meat because that's supposed to be the episode. Anyway, let's get into the games that we have been playing lately. And as tradition dictates, we start with our guest. So, Dave, what have you been playing lately?
You know, I always like appetizers before the main course. I'm happy to oblige. Well, in typical fashion, you bring an anime podcaster onto a video game podcast, and in true fashion, I'm watching more shows than I am playing games, but I am actually kind of in a holding pattern right now. I've got a big game, one of my favorite franchises ever, Xenoblade Chronicles. We've got Xenoblade X coming out in March.
Ooh, yes.
And I am looking around at my list going, I don't really want to dive into anything too big. And so with that logic, here I am trying to platinum Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age.
At least you can speed that up. There's like a button to speed stuff up, right?
Oh yeah, my default game speed is 2 times. Like four times speed is ludicrous, but I can play most of the game at twice speed. Yeah, it's a trip. But yeah, Final Fantasy XII, making my way through it. I'm in the final act, and yeah, just kind of in side quest hell right now, but that's just how the game is. But that's also one of my, I default to a couple of comfort games. Harvest Moon's one of them. Been playing a lot of Friends of Mineral Town, and then Final Fantasy 12 is kind of the other one because I've played it so much since high school. I can just run through it, and it's such a zen flow state of a game anyways. You just press forward and let the gambits do the rest. I don't know. I like the gambit system.
Are you aware of my feelings of Final Fantasy 12? I don't think I've said them in a very long time, or if ever on the episode, really. Maybe
it's been a while, but I mean, if you love it, I understand. If you hate it, I also understand.
Okay.
So, I mean, I am a 12 defender, but I'm not an apologist.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a Final Fantasy.
I get it.
No, I'm a Final Fantasy 13 apologist, so I understand the position. Yeah. I think Final Fantasy 12 is the only game in the Final Fantasy series that made me physically ill. So there's that. I've heard the Zodiac Age fixes a lot of my problems with it.
It does. If it makes you feel better, my original copy of 12 was from the PlayStation 2, was given to me, just foisted upon me by a friend who was like, screw this game. I hate it. I'm going to trade it in. They were stuck at a certain point. And I didn't have a lot of games at the time. And Final Fantasy 12 was my second game I ever played in the series. I started with 3. And just like many things, I got into gaming late. So 12 just happened to be, sure, a free game for me. And I ended up really liking it. And 12, the way that you explore the different zones, 12 set a lot of foundation for me to love JRPGs, but especially Xenoblade with the open area. So 12 kind of primed me for that series. So I look at Xenoblade as like Final Fantasy 12, but good.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
Yeah. No, actually, I feel the same way about Xenoblade. It's funny because Xenoblade Chronicles for the Wii, and I know the definitive version is probably a little bit better, but that's my favorite JRPG of all time.
Absolutely. Same.
Yeah. I absolutely love that.
It's immaculate.
Game. Yeah. But if you ask me to play Final Fantasy 12, I will recoil and hiss at you.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like I should love both in theory, but I don't, which is sad, I guess.
Well, other than a massive JRPG before another massive JRPG, I am playing a little bit of like Pokemon TCG Pocket. That's kind of taken over my mobile gaming. I don't do any mobile gaming at all. So the fact that Pokemon TCG is sticking around, it's, go in, do dailies, 5 minutes, I'm done for the day. But even then, just collecting the cards and playing in event matches, it's fun. It's sped up Pokemon trading card game. I used to play a little bit, but just as a kid, didn't know what I was doing. But yeah, if you're a fan of Pokemon TCG or TCG Pocket, it's a solid little game, little time waster.
No, this is the newer one. This isn't like this is
the brand new one. Not on Nintendo Switch Online. No, not that one.
Okay.
But that's also really, really good. I love that game.
Soundtrack's fantastic.
Oh, the soundtrack's immaculate. I love that game. I need to continue that, actually. I haven't played it in a hot minute.
I've never played it, but I have listened to the soundtrack for it. I'm not a big card game guy. I think the first game I ever played, we just did it for RJC, was SNK versus Capcom Card Fighters Clash. And that's the first video game card game I played. And I think the last time I played any card game, period, was Magic the Gathering. That was when I was in 4th grade, which was not recent. To say the least. But for myself, the game that we're talking about today is really the only game I have been playing, I think. I think it is.
It takes over.
It does. It does consume. I tried playing some Sonic CD. Unfortunately, my JVC XI decided that it did not want to play CD games for whatever reason. Who knows? Hopefully it's an easy fix. I don't want to spend the money to get it repaired. But the good news is I do have another Sega CD that does work. So I will be able to play some Sonic CD soon. And I will be guesting over on the Main Quest podcast to cover that game. If you like me, go check out the Main Quest podcast. If you don't, I don't know why you're listening to this show. But hey, we all have our kinks, and I don't kink shame. So welcome. I appreciate it. But before we get into this, I just want to kind of give a background into what got you here, which I think is kind of funny. When every February we try to do anime month because we have Ryan Trainer on. Ryan Trainer, of course, longtime fan of the show. He was doing a Fist of the North Star kind of theme there. And then one year it was Fist of the North Star with the Sailor Moon RPG. And let's make February anime month. We first asked Ryan Trainer what game he wanted to do. And I can't remember which one he wanted to do. But then we asked you and you're like, well, I want to do Harvest Moon. And it's like, that's not anime. Like from the Treehouse Anime Club. I was like, you know what? Screw it. We'll do Harvest Moon because I'm a big fan of the series, or I was, like the Super Nintendo game and the N64 game. So it's like, I've never played Friends of Mineral Town. Let's give it a shot. And then that led to the previous episode also not being anime with Super Mario Brothers 3. And you could say it's kind of anime. He has a look to him. But no, it was not. This was not anime month. I do apologize to everybody who was anticipating that. I don't think anyone really cares. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it's not an anime month, even though we have the man behind the Treehouse Anime Club and the soon to launch anime field guide coming up. And so we'll keep that thematic. I do believe. Yeah, I'll ask you what inspired you to pick this after when we get into the personal experiences here. And before we do that, I'm kind of feeling off without Shane here, but I'm going to have to introduce myself into the brief history of Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town. This will be another quick brief history, as there really isn't much in the way of stories when it comes to Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town, in terms of its history and development. Now, you may think that this is just because it's a Game Boy Advance game that probably didn't have a big budget or hype and appeals to a simultaneously niche and casual audience, which is mostly true, I'm assuming. But this story of seasons actually begins with Harvest Moon Back to Nature, which came out for the PlayStation initially in 1999. And that game was a quasi-remake of Harvest Moon 64, which came out for the N64, who would have guessed, also in 1999. This is because Friends of Mineral Town is a remake of Back to Nature. Yeah, this game in remakes has a bit of a theme, as this game has also been remade or have slightly different releases. This includes more Friends of Mineral Town, where the protagonist is gender swapped, and Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town, which came out for the Nintendo Switch initially in 2019, with later releases on the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Insofar as its release, it was developed by Marvelous Interactive and published by Natsume. It was first released in Japan on April 18th, 2003 for the Game Boy Advance, with North America seeing it on November 17th and Europe getting it on March 26th, 2004. Reviewers mostly enjoyed it with an aggregate score of 81% according to Metacritic, and while the stream of remakes would indicate it did well enough, there is no official sales data to be found. And that's pretty much it for this ranch story. So that is your brief history of Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town. All right, so I'm sorry for such a brief history. It's kind of like it's a Harvest Moon game. It's a new one. That's all I kind of found on it.
Pretty much.
Yeah, but I do want to get into the brief history because you have a lot of it, and I don't really have much. So my brief history is Dave nominated it. I didn't own a physical copy of the first Harvest Moon. I played a lot on the emulator and stayed up to like 3 o'clock in the morning doing so on the Super Nintendo. And that's what got my love sparked for the series before, I guess, I didn't go back to it, because when you stay up till 3 in the morning, you kind of learn that crack can harm lives.
Yeah.
I've been staying away from it. But enough of me talking. I've been talking for too long. I've been hogging this mic. Dave, what's your personal history with Harvest Moon? Why did you pick this game for this episode? Well, what's up with your personal experiences?
Well, funny enough, my gaming history doesn't really start until a little bit later. Most of my gaming growing up was I had a PlayStation that was a hand-me-down, and then my grandparents had a Game Boy or like a Game Boy Advance, and that was for the kids. And so every couple of months, or if I was lucky, a couple of weeks, I got to play like an hour or two of Game Boy. And so for many years, say like from ages like 5, 6 to about 11, gaming for me was how long can I be nice And how long do I have to visit family before I can play Pokemon? And that was video games to me. I remember asking Dad, like, why can't I play Pokemon Stadium on my PlayStation? I had no concept of what Nintendo was or anything like that. I just knew here it was. And so getting into 2003, well, the Game Boy Advance was becoming more of a big deal. And I really wanted a Game Boy Advance so I could play Pokemon Sapphire. Well, in the meantime, this little game cart called Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town came across. I don't know how my granddad found it. He grew up farming, so maybe he saw a farmer on the screen and thought, man, this will be fun for the kids. So I pop it in, and immediately, maybe not immediately because the game takes a while to get going, but it got its hooks in me. Harvest Moon is not exactly the kind of game that you could just pop in. Well, you can pop in and play it for a few minutes, but it's not one that you can pop in, play a few minutes, and then come back in 2 months. I got a pretty big obsession with not just this game, but owning a Game Boy Advance. And so Harvest Moon kicked off not just my love of gaming, but it was a different type of game. I'd never experienced like a life sim before, and I really fell in love with the characters and the world of Mineral Town. And this game just kicked off my entire love for the Game Boy Advance, outside of Pokemon, of course. And so when I finally managed to get my hands on a Game Boy Advance, it was because someone at my Boy Scout troop, we would do an annual fundraising for popcorn. And the top prize was a Game Boy Advance SP. I remember it was Fire Engine Red. If you sell this much popcorn at the top level, I didn't make it. Couldn't pull the numbers together, but another friend in my troop did. And so he was just going to throw out his old junker of a Game Boy Advance, which I have right here. Purple, has no back, buttons decide not to work randomly. But it's my Game Boy and I love it. And I'm glad they gave it to me. And about the time that it lasted for about 2 years. And then in 2005, 2006-ish, no, it was Christmas of 2007, I got my Nintendo DS Lite. And so starting from 2007, I was able to have my own DS and actually start to play Harvest Moon seriously. And my cousin and I would trade this game back. So it has 2 save files. I had one slot, he had the other one. We were able to trade it back and forth. I just love this game. It's one of those, it really gets its hooks in me. And a lot of memories tied in of hanging out with family, spending time with my cousin. He and I would swap the games and we would swap tips and tricks, all of the discovering the lore of the villagers and all their, dialogue boxes, the optimizations, just everything. It hit everything from pre-planning stage. He has the engineer brain, so he really liked that aspect, and a little bit of economics. So it just kind of hit everything at once. And since then, I've been a pretty faithful player of the series through bad and good.
That's a lot. I know you kind of.
It's a lot.
That is a lot. That inspired. I thought I saw something that inspired you to really get a GameCube too. Isn't that the case as well?
Yes. So there's a couple of quirks about Friends of Mineral Town to kind of go off on a side tangent here. Around the same time that Friends of Mineral Town came out, both in 2003, they did the GameCube game for Harvest Moon: A Wonderful Life. And it's this other town entirely called Forget-Me-Not Valley. And if you had a key feature about Friends of Mineral Town is it can link, the classic thing of the GameCube games and Game Boy Advance games could talk to each other if you plugged in your Game Boy. And there's an entire link feature built into both games. And so it wasn't just the Game Boy Advance I was obsessed with. I wanted to have A Wonderful Life to play on the GameCube, so then I could unlock bonuses in both games. So, I mean, there's an entire house locked behind as a special prize. If you max out the link between the 2 games, it also unlocks new music, and you get characters from you get 2 characters from Forget-Me-Not Valley who show up. And I think if you connect in A Wonderful Life, it also gives you more music. And then I think it's like an exclusive baby toy or something. A Wonderful Life is all about a life on the farm, having a family like that. Mm-hmm. So I'd never had a GameCube, and I didn't get it until college. Again, just my college roommate had a GameCube, and I played his GameCube so much. I even went out and bought games for a GameCube I didn't even own. He gave me his childhood GameCube at the end of the semester.
Oh, wow.
It's sitting over there. Again, he was just like, you fell in love with this, so here you go.
That's wild.
And I was just absolutely floored that he did that. And so, yeah, it's sitting on the floor next to me. I'm not going to pick it up, but it's sitting on the floor next to me.
I'm sure the audio listeners will be disappointed.
Oh yeah, the creaky handle and everything. Yeah, audio
exactly.
design. Yeah. I don't know. Just the more I look back, and when I was thinking about prepping for this episode, Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town, and just the series in general, this one little Game Boy Advance cart talked to two separate games. It's stuck around. I still play my childhood cart even today. Not as much as I used to since the remake came out, and also optimizations. But I mean, it's still got a charm to it that I just keep coming back to, and I'll play before I know it. Hours have gone by, and I've done another in-game year. I don't know. It's always had a magnetic charm to it. I'm rambling, but it's just it's hard to just sum up in 2 paragraphs a game that I've been playing consistently for 20 years plus at this point.
Yeah, and I do love the fact you brought up Boy Scouts. Popcorn sales, right? Popcorn sales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was murder. Do not miss those days.
When I was in grade school, and I remember I would always get a lot of points. I can't remember what I spent them on. We didn't have video games when I did it. It was all like camping gear and stuff like that. It wasn't too hip with the kids, I would say. I mean, I do remember, I'm getting into a tangent about selling popcorn for Boy Scouts. That was always cool because I just go like door to door with a little sheet. People would fill it out. And then you'd wait for the popcorn to come in, and then you go drop it off at everybody's house. Even though I feel like it took forever for it to arrive. And sometimes you just be like, I'm too lazy to drop it off, and I get yelled at.
Yeah.
Because it was taking time out of playing video games. Damn it. That's what I wanted to do. But that's cool, man. I love to hear how it ties into like a shared experience that we both have in terms of like Boy Scout selling popcorn, which was it was a special time in my life, selling the popcorn part from like 1st grade to 5th grade. I don't remember the gifts, but they were nowhere near as cool as getting a Game Boy Advance. I think it would have sold a lot more popcorn if that was the case.
To be fair, the Game Boy Advance was like the top point prize. Like everything else was like you said, the camping gear and thermos and stuff. Like the Game Boy Advance was like, this is unusual. Like this is they're really serious.
Yeah, it's like that. There's like the golden carrot. Like, come and get it.
Yeah, yeah.
Even though some of the camping gear is probably more expensive now I look back at it.
Oh yeah.
There's some good stuff. Let's get into the game proper here. Love your story, and I think it's going to bleed over into a lot of these aspects of the game. And I was hearing you talk about how much you love these characters and how much you connected with it. So let's get into the plot and writing of this game. What's the plot? You can probably articulate the plot better, because I'm just going to say it's like every other Harvest Moon game. You show up on your farm, you inherit it from a dead relative, and it's time to start hoeing down. Maybe you can explain this a little bit better, because I think there's a deeper plot going on.
Well, like you said, every good story begins with a death.
Indeed.
This one is no different. Usually the fashion is your grandpa kicks the bucket, and it turns out he was a big nature boy, so you get the farm. This one's more like an adopted granddad, and then there's something about a little girl that you met at some point when you were a kid playing, and you promised to meet again. So there's a little bit of love going in as well. So, all the death and the drama. Here we go. Some exciting stuff. No, there really is no plot to this game on the surface. You inherited a farm from a dead relative adjacent. And in Back to Nature, Mayor Thomas, because it was on a PlayStation and there was actually an end to that game, Mayor Thomas would go, yeah, you get 3 years to turn this place into something, or we'll kick you out of the village. That's not in this game.
Oh, no.
You got to work really hard to get kicked out of that village. Like, you got to do nothing. If you do the bare minimum, he'll go like, you pass. Good job. As far as so what kind of story is there to discover in this game? Well, I'm glad you asked, imaginary listener, actual listener. The story
they're
for
all
me,
asking.
Yeah, they're all wondering, is this real life or is this a fantasy?
Caught in a landslide.
I think if you're looking for a story in this game, it really is with the characters. So like with any good life sim games, if you talk to someone every day and you give them presents, they'll eventually like you. And every character has the way that this story plays out is every time, or it seems at random, but it's actually across a fixed amount of time or a specific time of day or weather or indoors, outdoors, whatever. But you'll just trigger these random cutscenes, and it's just, here's a little snippet of life in the village. Or if you get further in a friendship, it'll be, oh, now this person's going to start talking a little bit about their family drama. Like some of the characters are just full on trauma dumping on you. if you get to be really good friends with them. But it's just little vignettes of life along the village. The romance system also plays a key part in it. You know, you can romance. There are Anne, Karen, Potpourri, Mary, four ladies to choose from. Each of them has
Harvest
their own.
Goddess too? The goddess?
She's an absentee wife. She doesn't count.
Okay.
The Harvest Goddess is, if you want to marry me, complete the game, and then I'm still going to live in the spring, and then I'm going to show up and say, oh, by the way, happy birthday, or by the way, I'm pregnant. And then she'll just drop the kid off like a month later. It's not worth it. Don't. And if you don't say I want to marry the Harvest Goddess at the beginning of the game, you're screwed out of it anyway. So yeah, she doesn't count. But yes, she is a special bachelorette if you so choose to undergo that ordeal. But yeah, everyone just has their own individual stories, and a key part of the romance system is you have to trigger 4 specific what they're called heart events if you want to move along and eventually get the marriage going. But yeah, there's a surprising amount of depth to these characters. It's not just like, oh, I like this, or this person told me this. Like, you have, I think it's like 3 families with missing relatives. One example, the chicken farm. You've got Lilia and her two kids. Well, Lilia she's a bit sickly, so her husband's off to go find a cure, but he's been gone a while. So you have her son, Rick, who's like, yeah, dad's gone forever. He just left the family. And then you have Potpourri, one of the bachelorettes, who believes in her dad's going to return. And then in the middle of all this, you got the guy who's in charge of shipping your crops, Zach, who years back apparently was a drifter through town. Lilia's husband, Rod, gave him a job in the town. So Zach's like super indebted to Lilia's husband, but he also has a crush on the dude's wife. And he's never going to do anything about it. And everybody in the village knows this, except for Lilia. And Zach thinks he's on the down low, but the wives in the town square will literally gossip about this every single day if you listen in.
Wow.
And that's just one family. You have 2 where, you know, May's been left behind by her mom, leaving her with the granddad. And so sometimes you'll walk in and he's having a phone conversation, begging his daughter to come back and, you know, get her kid. And then the winery, there was a big argument with his daughter, Duke and Manna. He had a big argument with his daughter. She's off. She's left town. He doesn't talk to her, but Manna will call the daughter. And then if you keep one of the bachelors, Cliff, in town, well, now Duke goes from a angry alcoholic to he turns his life around because you brought Cliff in and they adopt this guy. And this is all things you have to do yourself. This isn't just handed out to you. You have to earn it. And that's what I really appreciate about the different characters. And the stories go a little bit deeper than you would expect, but you got to work for it.
Yeah, I think that's a pro and a con. The amount of story that you're going to get is all dependent on what you do. The game doesn't foist it upon you, doesn't thrust it in your face. You could go the entire game, and I pretty much experienced it this way, because my target was make money, marry Anne.
Yeah.
And that's all I cared about. You can talk to other characters, get their backstory, because every once in a while I go into a store and it wouldn't let me access the shop because it would be like 10 minutes before the store closed. And so I just go talk to them, and sometimes you get snippets. So there's stuff there. So if someone plays this game and they're like, I didn't experience any of this, that's because you do actually have to do it. It's there for the player to get invested in. The town isn't living, quote unquote. It's close to that, but everything's pre-scripted, so you know where everyone's going to be. It's very automated in that aspect. But the characters do have depth to them. And there were some things I noticed, the blacksmith and his son. And I realized, like, I was like walking home from one of the stores one day, or one of the locations, probably giving the gnomes flour or whatever. Like, I see that kid walking through the town. I talk to him. It's like, I hate my grandpa, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, wow, there's like drama here.
Yeah.
Or before Cliff stayed, and the only reason I know Cliff could stay, because Cliff doesn't have to stay.
No.
If you don't talk to him, you can miss out on that. If you don't talk to him on the church at one of the harvest festivals, the wine harvest festival, if you don't talk to him there, he won't stay in the town. And when I remember talking to the wife, what's her name? It's not
Manna is, if you're talking to Duke's wife, is her name's Manna.
At the winery.
Yeah.
Okay, her name's Manna. And you're talking to her, and like it's very much giving this aesthetic that everything's fine, but she's like, all that he does all day is drink now that she left, and I want her to come back. So there is this depth, as you talked about, that definitely exists, but it is earned. It's not given to you. And the reason I say it's a pro and a con is because, like, if you want it, it's there. But at the same point, if you're saying that you do want it and you don't do anything for it, you'll think it's not there. And I think it's kind of a tough sell if you don't know, if you don't want to tell anyone anything about the game, and they're coming away from it's like, oh, it's just a farm sim and there's nothing much to it. That's really underselling what is potentially a part of this game. And I think that's a shame, because there's no reason to really go into any of these houses if you take that path of just farm and marry, and that's it. You can miss a lot. Sometimes the game encourages you to do just that, which makes it tricky. Did you find that to be the same case?
At the beginning, yeah, but I mean, it's kind of hard to go back to a first playthrough feeling. I remember thinking I didn't really have access to like good internet, so a lot of the game, I would say, thinking back, a lot of the game felt obtuse as far as relationships or when I could trigger certain, like, especially if you don't know how to trigger cutscenes. A lot of this can feel random, which I mean, in a way, it also kind of makes it, I wouldn't say obtuse, I would say it makes the encounters feel organic and random. But unless you really care about the characters, or unless you go out of your way to really talk to some folks every day, there's not really, there's no tangible gameplay benefit to talking to people. Now, some of them, I say that, but like some of them will go, oh yeah, by the way, here's a family recipe for like ice cream or something. And that goes into cooking, but that's it. Although some characters, like if you go, if since you were romancing Anne, I wondered if you were able to ever get into the back room of Doug's inn, because by virtue you're probably talking to Doug every day because since he's there.
Actually, no, because I would just go in there. Sometimes he'd be in there, and then sometimes like I don't have the money to buy on a lunch, and there didn't really seem to be a reason to talk to him. Right. I was going through this through a very kind of logical, technical approach. Yeah. Like stoic and emotionless, except for Anne. That was like the only person. Like, you get chocolate in a gift wrap box every day.
Yep.
Here you go. Every day. Every day. You. And everyone else gets nothing. I wait until 11 o'clock after I've watered all my crops, whatever else I have to do on the farm, pet my dog by picking him up and throwing him. Yeah. And petting the horse and maybe playing with my chickens. And then I'm going to go to the market. I'm going to buy chocolate. I'm going to give it to Anne. Yep. And I'm not even going to talk to Doug, because Doug told me to stay out of his back room. He's a dick. Fuck you, Doug. Yep. I can go wherever I want. This is an RPG. That's what I do. And you told me no. So I'm going to take your daughter away. That's how this is going to work. Yep. Something like that. Anyway, other cool things. This is kind of dipping into the gameplay too, but they're like very interconnected. In terms of establishing some relationships with some of the bachelorettes, and I'm assuming this extends to some of the other characters, you can do it just passively. So if you just go to the events, they come up to you and they talk to you and they're like, hey, how about you come watch the horse races or throw frisbees with your dog or whatever. I think the relationships with those characters build every single time you go to those events with those characters, and sometimes participating in like their markets. So, for example, going to the market every day, buying that chocolate and buying that flour.
Karen likes that.
I got like a purple heart, the first heart for Karen. Never talked to her or gave her anything. Nope. And her heart rating went up.
Yeah, for Anne, it's buying food from Doug, various things like that. And if you go just a quick tangent, if you do make friends with villagers like that, like there's just certain places like you can't go upstairs because our bedrooms are up there. So if you become friends with the villagers, eventually they will let you back there. So when the times that Doug's not behind the counter, well, he's in the back room cooking, and then you see his bedroom and Anne's bedroom. So it's various spots like that just scattered through the village. If you become friends with them, hey, well, you can now go into you can now see our rooms. You can't do anything. There's nothing to get, but you can go there.
Yeah. And I think that's, to tie that back into like the plot and writing. Right. And just kind of do that. Something that we've said about like the Lunar series is, Corey said this very well, which is it feels like you're talking to actual people. Now we're beyond that in terms of translation, I think, at this point in the West for video games. I think we got to that point. But when it comes to Harvest Moon, I don't think that's something that people are necessarily going to expect, because that's not the type of game it presents itself as. So that was a pleasant surprise about how good the writing could be, and how human all of these characters that in a typical RPG would just be NPC vendors could possibly be if you invest in them.
Right. And they got better at writing as the series progressed. So they've done a lot for character work and expanded the dating system and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, in conclusion, yeah, the writing and the story it will surprise you pleasantly, I think. But again, it is a game that asks you to invest the time and effort for it.
But let's get down to the farm and talk about the gameplay here.
Yeehaw!
Slaving away on your patch of land that constantly gets filled with weeds, rocks, and sticks. And I'll get into what the basic gameplay loop is of Harvest Moon, which I'm told is essentially Stardew Valley, which I haven't played because of the crack avoidance reason here.
Yeah.
You have a farm. I think we've established that. And you have a time system. It sucks. You start out with a really shitty farm. And you have a bunch of tools you can use. You have like a hammer, an axe, a hoe, a watering can, a sickle.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much it, right? That's the.
You got to go buy and find the rest. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got your brush, shears, milker. You got to buy those.
Yeah.
Zach gives you a fishing rod.
If you want to fish. I have mixed feelings about the fishing. It's not good until winter. If you only want to make money.
Mm-hmm.
But you start out and you got to clear out this patch of land. And you have no money. But the first thing you do is just clear it off. Make sure all your land is clear. So get rid of the weeds, get rid of the sticks, get rid of the rocks. And then you have a couple options. One is that you can start making money by going into the mine on the other side of town and harvesting ore, which is probably the most efficient way to do it right off the bat. So you can increase the size of your rucksack. Pretty much just increase the size of your rucksack because you're going to need that.
Priority 1, yeah.
Yep. Or number 2, because your rucksack can in the beginning can only have 3 items.
Yeah, you're swapping out stuff pretty constantly. So having the basic upgrade of 2 extra slots feels like, finally I can magical. Actually do something. Yeah.
Yes. And the reason why it is magical is because you need to make money in order to continue your farm, and time is constantly ticking as long as you are outside. If you are inside, time is not ticking, which makes the whole entire harvesting ore in the mines even more beneficial if that's how you're going to make money. And there's a whole entire meta to the mines I'm sure we're going to get into, love or hate it. But once your farm is cleared, you start making your grids however you want to make them. There's 6 grids, or sometimes I do 3 by 2 with something in the middle, because once plants start growing, that middle one is not accessible unless you get gnomes, but that's way down the line from where you start. So you have to hoe little patches appropriately, go buy seeds, plant your seeds, water them every day, hope they grow, put them in the shipment, make more money, rinse, wash, repeat, and expand, and start doing that. That's pretty much the entire loop of the game. But you get animals, you don't have to. You can get chickens, sheep, and cows. And then there's the mining, as we already discussed, that pretty much allows you to upgrade your tools in order to make them better. But as for the basic gameplay loop, tell me why you're addicted, and essentially why this is heroin for adults.
Well, here it is. You were describing the gameplay loop and the whole idea of do more and expand. This is a game that is constantly going, here's my short-term goals, I want long-term goals, and you're constantly completing your short-term goals. And again, the upgrades at the beginning are you got to upgrade pretty quickly. The money loop as well is the satisfying thing of, okay, now I have my first animal and here's my first product, and it's that little bit extra. Every day is just a little bit, you're getting better and better and better. And you're discovering more, and you're able to plant more, and then you get the upgrades that let you water more, or there are, bigger rocks, bigger stumps that you have to chop. And so now you got to go into the mines to get the ore to upgrade your materials. It's a classic loop. If you've played any second of Stardew Valley, you know exactly what I'm saying. Stardew Valley was like you can go to any kind of interview you want from Stardew Valley. He mentions Harvest Moon right there. and even upgrading tools was there from the first game. And that's just the whole loop. It's just a constant planning ahead, and then the reward cycle of a job well done at the end. And then you've got the interpersonal stuff to add a little bit of flavor as well. A little bit of the beginnings of a dating system. This is, I think, the first time the games previously, if we're talking just the dating in general, the life sim was very, very basic, and it still is pretty basic here.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the first time that they really were expanding on it, and where it felt like, now you have portraits and all of these extra events. So they really, this is the beginnings, the foundations of how they would expand more like the life sim aspects. But yeah, it's just a constant short-term goals met, get to your long-term stuff. And then once you get good enough, once you get enough money, then you can start upgrading your house. And now cooking is unlocked, and your different festivals. Now I'm not just raising animals for product. Now I'm raising an animal to participate in the chicken, cow, sheep festival. And if you win those festivals, they start producing gold and later platinum rated products. And so there's an incentive to work towards that.
Yep.
So that's the gameplay loop in a nutshell. How would you like your heroin injection?
Yeah, and if you don't think it's addictive, I mean, not everyone thinks it's addictive. Shane did tell me offline he did not like this game. So that is what it is. He did not find it addictive. I do. And I know a lot of people do. And we'll see that in the pontifications, I believe, because like it's shocking the amount of people that have played this.
Oh, yeah.
Like this is probably the most popular game no one ever talks about. And this is for that reason. It's because like once you get your hands on it and once you start getting involved in it, it's very hard to put down. And so like I knew like as soon as I got married, that's when the credits roll, that like I had to put it down. Mostly because I have other things I have to get to. And if I didn't, I probably would continue to play it. Like I said, like this is my goal, get married and move on. But there is so much more beyond that. It's kind of scratching the surface, and the game lends itself to enable you to do that. I briefly mentioned the gnomes, the sprites, whatever you want to call them earlier. If you become really good friends with them, and one of the ways you do that is you go to the market, you buy flour, you give them flour. And thank you, Dave, for letting me know that, because I saw in the facts was grab grass of the same color and give it to them. That'll raise their appreciation.
No, never. You sell that or no. It does work, but yeah, flour is like, I don't know why all of them like flour specifically. Maybe they really like pancakes. I don't know. They're industrious little gnomes, but
they need that starch.
Yeah, they need that starch. But yeah, I think one thing I do want to mention before we go into the gnomes, and that does kind of feed into it. All of this is completely player driven. There's nothing in the game telling you do this, or there's no princess to rescue, or there's no like hold for. You play this game at your pace. There is no quote wrong way to play this game. That's another thing I think is there are certainly secrets.
Yes.
And you can certainly optimize. Lord knows you can optimize the hell out of this game. There's a lot. This game has a lot of depth that you can plumb, or you can, again, just play it at your own. Just play it at your own pace. There's no rush. Take your time.
Yeah, the goals that you want to accomplish are set by you.
Just set by you. How much can you handle?
Yeah.
Your only real tangible limit is time and stamina. Other than that, go nuts.
Stamina's so irritating.
Yeah. First year is rough.
Well, fortunately, you can recover it by going to the spring. How do you is that the little apples?
Yeah, the power berries.
Under your name? I never figured out how to increase them.
Yeah, the power berries.
Yeah, the power berries. I don't know how to get those. They just like randomly happened to me. It's like I got 2. I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of, I don't know how I got these. Well, one is because I won the chicken festival.
Oh, you did? Yeah. So that's one.
Yeah.
Was the other one in the mine, or was it on your farm?
I think it was on my farm.
Yeah, they put a power berry on your farm pretty close to the starting area. Basically, they say, you got a random chance of finding it when you dig it up. And then there's like whatever level on both mines, there's a power berry on at both mines, the lake mine and the spring mine. But yeah.
Okay. No, I didn't win the chicken festival. I won the Frisbee festival.
Oh, okay.
I won the Frisbee festival.
Yeah,
with my dog.
So you get one for the Frisbee festival and the chicken festival. Yeah.
I did not get it for the chicken, but then I got a crown next to my name too.
Oh, the crown next to the chicken? Yeah, so that lets you know that the chicken is a winner. So that's what I meant by the higher quality products. But you got
for the dog. Yeah.
Oh, for the dog? Yeah, the dog doesn't do anything. it was a different mini game in Back to Nature. I think they had dog racing. Then it was like, well, it's kind of redundant with horse racing. So the Frisbee Festival, I think, is exclusive to Friends of Mineral Town. There's a couple of festivals that swap, and that's an all other thing. But
Yeah.
the dog having a crown just means, hey, you won the Frisbee Festival. That it means he's a winner.
Yeah. But you are right. I mean, this all play like if you don't know that the gnomes they can help you, then the gnomes don't have to help you. But if you do know the gnomes help you, that does free you up to go talk to the people in the town. And from what I can tell, there's no downside to have them help you. If you just set every single one to help you for a week, the only downside is you don't get to have a tea party with them because they're not all there. That's about it.
That's about it. And again, it's the tea party gives you tea leaves, which you can only get from that. So, I mean,
yeah,
it's a cooking ingredient. And what I would always do is would see tomorrow is going to be rainy. Okay, you all get the day off. And then I go do my thing, have a tea party during the rain. Doesn't matter if there's work to be done the next day. But, you know, it is what it is. It's a tea party. Who cares?
You're crazy about the raining. And I'll tell you this. I'd rather, because when I was getting like later on in my second year, I made it through like 2.5 years. That's how long it took me to marry Anne.
Okay.
Like it got to the point where if I was harvesting, like I'd wake up, my character would wake up in the morning and look at the farm. And especially like during fall with sweet potatoes and eggplants, I'd be like, oh, fuck you.
Yeah.
I would spend like half the day harvesting, and you have to get it done before 5 o'clock. I mean, you can get it, you can put in after 5 and it'll just carry over the next day. Yeah. But it's just like, oh my God. And if you have those little gnomes harvesting, doesn't matter if it's raining or not. Like you little bastards are going to work anyway. Go to work. I'm going to give you more flowers. Stay happy. Stay happy. I'm going to pay you. I'm a benevolent farmer with these gnomes. I do pay them handsomely with bread making material, but I would rather have them harvest than water the plants. So when you say raining, I'm like, ugh, because the tool upgrades, like they really do help out.
Yeah,
they massively help out.
It's a marked improvement. Yeah,
I didn't know how to do it at first because I was getting them and I was like, well, this isn't doing anything. Then I looked up, there was something and it said, oh, you have to charge them by holding down the button.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, that's how it makes it better. That's when I realized like the watering can would be able to cover like a 3x3 grid.
Exactly.
And I was like, okay, now I can just go through all of these plants. But harvesting, you can never harvest more than one plant at a time, no matter how big your rucksack is. And even when your rucksack hits the maximum level, it's only what? Like 9?
Yeah.
You can carry 9. So yeah, I'd rather have those gnomes carry those plants every day than water. But if you want those tea leaves, that is a strategy. I just wait until I probably do it at the very
like the
beginning.
last day.
Oh, they only do it
beginning or the last day.
They only do it during spring, don't they?
Yeah, it's only in spring, but again, it's tea leaves, so it's not the biggest thing unless you're going for a recipe completion, because tea really doesn't restore anything. There's one character in the game who loves tea. Sure, you can give her the tea. Why not? You know, it's a completion thing. You only need to do it once.
Who loves tea?
Ellie the nurse, she likes tea. And there's actually if you're talking about all of the different grass, there is what's it called? Actually, it's literally called Ellie leaves, where it's all of the grasses plus white and black grass. And you just mix them all together and it's an exclusive special grass. And she likes the grass named after her.
She loves grass.
She loves that weed, yes.
As a good nurse would. For medicinal purposes.
Medicinal purposes, surely.
Medicinal purposes.
The doctor also likes medicinal grasses. He goes into the mountain to gather the weeds. So yes.
Yeah, of course.
Medicinal purposes.
What does black grass do?
It recovers a little bit of stamina, but it also makes you more. So there's like a stamina and fatigue system. So it restores stamina at the cost of a little fatigue. And fatigue just means the more you build up, the less you recover at the end of the day, like the less stamina you recover at the end of the day. So if you think about it, like you spent a long day farming, you used all the watering, and you didn't really eat any recovery stuff. The next day, it's like, man, why is my farmer getting tired quicker? Well, he's got some fatigue built up. But stamina's the big one. That's all it is.
Did you ever have to go to the doctor?
Early on, yes.
Okay. I was like, when he got blue in the face, I'm like, you're done. We're going to the springs.
We're going to the spring. No, but I've not passed out in a while.
I am upset because your animals die.
They can, yes.
They can. I had some chickens. And I think there was the day my characters got married. There must have been an unhealthy chicken on that day because you can't do anything on your wedding day.
You cannot.
You can't do nothing. The day that my characters got married, it must have been unhealthy because the very following day, one of my chickens died. Rick yelled at me.
He does.
And told me I could have done better. You should have done better.
Yep.
I'm like, I didn't even know it was sick.
They really guilt trip you about it too. I remember being so concerned because as a kid, there were some days, especially if we're going to talk about animals for a second and the weather, you have like the special weather of tornadoes. And then in the winter, tornadoes in
Blizzards,
summer,
yeah.
Winter gets a blizzard. I've had some save files where I had like 2 days of each. There's nothing you can do. Even if you have, I don't even think a harvest sprite, if you set one of the little gnomes on animal duty, I don't think he does it because he's like, I'm not going out in that. So
Yeah,
I've had
why would
animals
you?
die because I was locked out of it for 2 days and they were unhappy and they got sick or they just didn't get better.
Oh, they're fickle.
Yeah,
Chickens
they
are fickle.
They are.
Little bastards.
Yeah.
I took you outside and then I found out it was going to rain the next day. And I was like, I'm going to take you inside. And then I go back out that it's raining. So I'm not going to take them outside to pick them up. They're happy. And then the next day it's not raining anymore. I go to put them outside and they're unhappy. I'm like, you stupid fucking chickens.
Yep.
Like, you didn't want to be out in the rain. So I didn't keep you in the rain. I brought you in, fed you, took care of you. And now you're mad at me because you had to stay inside all day while it was raining.
If they're
Dumb
outside,
animals.
yeah, if they're outside while it's raining, you get a grace period of like an hour. And after that hour, they start becoming unhappy. As long as you feed them, they're usually okay. But you got to neglect your animals for a good while for them to be unhappy. But yeah, the animal sickness is a thing. They will get sick rather easily. I've had an animal get sick after I forgot to feed them for 1 day. Everyone else was fine, but this one sheep just decided, no, I'm going to make you really guilt it. So I didn't, like 3 days, he wouldn't do anything. It's just random. Sometimes they don't work.
Yeah.
And yeah, animals are indeed fickle in this game. They can be.
My chickens, they were just unhappy all the time. I thought
Yeah,
I did
all the
everything right.
time.
I fed them all the time. The chickens are unhappy. They're very, very snooty. Ugh. Fucking cocks. All right. But that's pretty much the gameplay loop. Do you want to talk about the mining? You said you're not a big mining fan.
Not in this game.
Okay. Explain how the mining works.
It works. Harvest Moon game and mining don't really. I still think they're working on it because it's boring. You walk into a brown room. It's full of gray rocks. You smack the rocks, ore comes out. And to go down to another level, you actually have to hoe the ground. And if you hoe the ground, you'll eventually uncover a ladder. You go down the ladder. There's another brown room full of gray rocks. Rinse, repeat. And these rooms can get really, really big. And so you're just running around, smacking rocks with a hammer, hoeing around, hoping to find a ladder. There's no indication of where a ladder is. It's completely random. And if you get lower in the mines, now you have a random chance of finding pitfalls. And it can drop you can lose a day with a pitfall just randomly. It can drop you 2 floors and it can drop you 20 floors. You lose a ton of stamina regardless. I hate mining in this game. I'll tell you right now, the spring mine is ores, the lake mine is like gems and some other things. But both of these mines have 255 damn floors. And so it's 255 floors of running around a brown room, smacking rocks, hoeing up the ground. And there is no way, even with max stamina and some recovery items, there is no way you're doing that, quote, legit. You have to save scum it. And so mining then becomes tedium. There's some things that like floor 100 has a special thing, floor such and so has a special thing. And even then it'll have a random chance. So what you have to do is if you are serious about reaching the bottom of the mines, you have to save on a floor, which thankfully, thank God, saving is like anywhere you want and just instant. You have to save on the floor, hoe around until you find the ladder, remember where it is, reload your save, go to that spot, one hoe, one square, or one stamina, rinse, repeat. And on the floors, like say floor 100 has a power berry, I think. I don't think that power berry is guaranteed. It's like a chance to have a power berry. So now you're saving before you go down the ladder, and then you're just digging around for no reason. Just praying that it's there. And then that's basically your day. You got to leave if you don't pass out first.
I actually encountered a floor where there was no stairs down either.
Yeah, that can happen
That
too.
happens.
That can happen
Yeah.
too. So in some instances, you're just boned.
Yeah. Not a big fan of it. The only time I was a fan of it at all was in winter. And that was because the gems are worth more than the ore.
Yes.
There's not that much difference depending on the level or what you get in terms of value for your gems. So you can go in and out of the cave, and you can get the gems, drop them off, go back in, get the gems, drop them off over and over and over again, with much more success and value than you would with the ore mine, with the original one. So that helped out because in winter you can't grow crops.
No, you cannot.
At all. So the only source of income you get is from honey, which is on your farm every day, the lake mine, and fishing.
Fishing,
and
whatever animals you have. Yeah, fishing's boring as well.
Fishing's not, it sucks.
Yeah.
The only way you can increase the value of the fish is if you increase the value of your rod, which means you have to fish more, and then you have to go back into the mine to increase the level of your rod.
Also, the fishing rod is the tool that takes the most time to upgrade. You can have if you know what you're doing, you can have every tool at level 5 except for the rod almost in like year 1, just by naturally playing the game.
Yeah.
Like the rod just takes forever. It's ludicrous.
And upgrading your tools is something you're definitely going to want to do. But in order to do that, you have to mine.
You have to mine.
The best way and the only way you can upgrade
You can stockpile
your tools,
though, but yeah.
You can, but you have to go down to the level where you get the special ore.
Luckily though, if we're talking the level 5 tool or like mithril, you can find mithril starting at like floor 5 of the spring mine.
I think it's 10.
You might be right at 10. I think at 10 you start finding orichalcum for like other ores for like makers, and you can make jewelry.
Yeah.
It's deep, but it's not like that. It's not like that deep. Like mithril starts, it's very rare at floor 5, but you can find it.
Yeah, but you still have to mine, and you still have to know. You still have to know what to do.
Yeah.
You still have to know the meta of save scumming. You still have to know all these things, because when you get to the gem mine, you get these other tools, the curse tools that become the blessed tools. But the only way you can even find them is if am I correct in this? All of your tools are leveled up to
it's just got to be, it's just got to be the corresponding tool. It has to be mithril.
Okay.
So if only your watering can is mithril, then okay. But the thing is, the cursed tools are all on specific floors. It's not a range. It's you got to go to this floor exactly. And the cursed tools, then they're always in these massive rooms. And I've had, again, this is one of those, like, you do not save when you enter the room. You save before you enter the room because there's a chance of the cursed tools being there.
Yeah.
It's not guaranteed. And that's, again, I cannot stress enough. I do not yearn for these mines. They suck. I had to say it. I'm sorry. I had to say it. Boo, David. Boo, David. Yeah. I had to say it.
Boo. There's some other things I kind of wanted to bring up in the gameplay, but I think we've covered the majority of it. Went to the mines. Anything else you want to touch on here in terms of how you are the fanatic here, and I'm a recovering Harvest Moon addict because you never stop recovering. What is anything else you want to talk about in terms of the gameplay here for Friends of Mineral Town?
As far as our main mechanics, we've pretty much covered them all. There is a side mechanic of course, it's not just your tools that get upgraded. I would be remiss to not mention that, yes, your farm does indeed get upgraded.
Yeah.
Your chicken coop and barn can both be upgraded once. So your barn would go from 8 animals to 16, and your chicken coop goes from 4 to 8. And 16 animals, and then having 24 total is a lot of animals to deal with. You can burn through a lot of stamina just brushing your cows and sheep. And then in addition to that, you can, of course, upgrade your house, which will unlock things like you can get shelves to then store ores. And it also unlocks special gems called like the goddess gems and the lake mine gems. And those will become special super duper whatevers that are really hard to find. But that unlocks another thing you can get in the game. There are, what am I thinking? Also cooking, mentioned cooking. Once you start upgrading your house, there will be a special shopping channel on your TV that starts running up. And so every week you can look at the shopping channel, go to Doug's Inn, hey, I would like to order a rug, please. And then rinse, repeat for however many weeks it takes. And then once you start getting cooking utensils, one thing I would like to praise the game for is the cooking system. In the current series, or what they moved to, is yes, the villagers will indeed give you recipes. And they'll just say, it can be, if you're mashing A, you can miss it very quickly. But in future games, recipes are like, if you don't have the recipe, the knowledge to fry an egg is just eternally escapes your mind until you unlock the recipe. In Friends of Mineral Town, no, I have the frying pan, I've got oil, I've got an egg, throw a little salt on it from the seasoning set, boom, fried egg. No recipe required. You basically you can discover recipes. So as a kid, naturally, I had like a notebook of recipes I would find. And later when I found a fan site with all of them written down, there'd be a part of I would start stockpiling ingredients in my refrigerator, and I would just start cranking out all of these recipes. And so I would like to praise the game for the cooking system, that you can just do it. There's no exclusive recipe. Like at the bottom of the spring mine, for example, the recipe for, they changed it to ketchup in another version, but I think the recipe for like French fries is at the bottom of the spring mine on a stone slab that the ancients left behind, how to cook potatoes in oil.
Yeah.
That's kind of a moot point when I can just potato, knife, oil, frying pan, chop, ding, fries are done, ding, fries are done.
I mean, it helps you with recovery, right? That's the basic gist.
Yeah, this is recovery stamina. And another thing, one of the little mechanics that the game doesn't tell you about, the more that you cook, your farmer goes from starting the day with like a rice ball to, well, one day he'll have a fruit smoothie. He'll wake up and he'll just make himself a fruit smoothie, or he'll have a fried egg or whatever. It'll randomly select something from a list of ingredients that you've made. He'll eat something, and it actually gives him a little extra stamina and fatigue recovery if, say, he's been falling behind. It has a tangible effect on his stats.
I did notice that. Like once I made the baked sweet potatoes, all of a sudden he started eating baked sweet potatoes in the morning.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. And there's a couple other things I cooked. And he started eating like, oh.
Yeah, it's a nice little touch. They didn't have to do that.
Well, okay. One of the things you brought up was about the shopping network.
Right.
There's a lot going on with that TV. That TV is invaluable. Oh, yeah. Because it'll tell you the weather for the next day. You got to know that. Have to know that. Especially once you start getting animals on your farm. It has advice for what to do on the farm, which is okay. Then it has this other person who's like, it's this day of the season, and here's the upcoming festivals. And have you decided to get rid of all your crop shit for the ones that aren't going to carry over? Because once you go over into the next season, all your crops die. Doesn't matter. They're all gone. You have to get rid of anything that's not producing fruit or whatever the day before it goes into the next season.
There are no cross-seasonal crops, correct?
No, zero. And then if you press to the left, that's where the shopping network comes up. Occasionally. It seems to come up randomly.
Most of the time it's anime. You can watch That's what
I was going to bring up. Yes. That is so cool.
You can watch it. You tune in every week on a specific day, and it's a new episode of a cartoon. And once you reach the end of the cartoon, it just starts over.
It's episodic.
Yeah.
It carries over. It has an entire saga of these characters and their plight, and everything is like, this is so cool, man. I love this shit. Like little details like that are things that make games like this feel more authentic. And that is what is just like, this is delightful. It's not mind breaking. These aren't fantastic stories or anything like that.
They're very much parodies. They elicit a chuckle.
Yes. It's cute that they did it. I love the fact, I love the fact they carry over. I love all this episodic content within this game. And I love it. I love it. I love it.
I will mention one I will
No,
mention
go
one
ahead.
funny quirk because there's a lot of
Mm.
different quirks in this game, and there was a document I was basically shared with Chris here of like, here's some funny screenshots of translations and stuff. But there's a rather infamous air quotes glitch in Friends of Mineral Town, and it requires a little bit of understanding of Japanese culture. And so basically, in the numbering system, there is the number 4 is pronounced shi, and the word for death is shin. So
Shi.
there's similar sounds if you just do it really fast. And so if you do a series of 4s, it's like shin, 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 shin. It's like it's repeating death is what people say. So it's kind of like 666 and the devil over here. So what the Japanese game does, if you go into your house at exactly 4:44 p.m. and you try and open the TV, you will get an infinite loop of a dialogue box just opening and closing. Your game, it's like your game crashes, is what it does. In the Japanese game, however, in the original, it just threw a bunch of 4s on the screen. You can imagine if you're a little Japanese boy or girl playing this game and all of a sudden it starts spouting a bunch of 4s at you and you can't close your game, you can't exit the dialogue box. It's almost like going into a mirror and saying Bloody Mary 3 times or whatever kind of deal. There's just little things like that do it. Also, like there's another item, the mirror. If you look at the mirror at midnight, all of a sudden there'll be your door will slam and there's a weird noise or something. And if you keep doing it, there's an ominous shadow on the mirror. But the 444 glitch, air quotes, because it's an intentional thing put in the game to freak out kids, but there wasn't like an analog that they could really do it with the English side. So Natsume decided, or the developers over on the translators, Natsume over here, just decided to have it be infinitely open and closing, which is a fun little quirk.
Huh. Yeah. And by the way, if this is very big in Japanese culture to the point where some hotels, if not all of them, don't have a 4th floor on their elevator, much like in the United States, like you don't have a 13th floor.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of idea. So yeah, like that's legit stuff, which is great. But let's move on. We've covered the gameplay here
Extensively.
But let's get into, I think, 2 topics that are going to go by rather quick, which is like the presentation, graphics, and audio. And let's start out with the graphics, this visual presentation. I think this game looks good.
Yeah.
It looks good. I think because this is a remake of the PlayStation game, it doesn't look as good as the PlayStation or N64 game. It doesn't. It looks better than the Super Nintendo game. It's more
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's I won't say far better because the Super Nintendo game has its own charm. This is more trying to be in line with the pre-rendered look of the N64 and PlayStation game, understandably. So I really think it comes down to what you prefer in terms of preference. But on a technical aspect, yes, this is a better looking game than the Super Nintendo game. But overall, I think, and this is probably, now I had to play this emulated. This is like a $50 game right now. I didn't want to spend $50 on the cart. Not saying that's too much, but it's a little much to do for an episode. However, on the emulator I was playing on, it seemed to suffer from that Game Boy, making up for the fact of how dark the Game Boy Advance screen was on the early versions. It seemed like it was very, very bright in its contrast.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've played it half with a backlight, and then again, my original Game Boy I didn't have a light attachment for it. So yes, if you are playing it on a standard Game Boy screen with no backlight or no, like if you're just doing the ambient light, it gets the job done. The contrast, when you're talking about, it is indeed a very bright game. I'd say it's a very colorful game. But yeah, I mean, it gets the job done. I think it looks good. I used to think it looked amazing actually when I was playing it as a kid. And then I saw something like Metroid Zero Mission or the Donkey Kong Country games on Game Boy Advance. And then I'm like, okay, no, this is fine. It's a nice little, like, it's got more animation to it than the SNES original. And it's kind of going for the timing of the power-ups and things. It's going for the back to nature look, also top-down versus isometric. I prefer the top-down.
I do too.
Just for gameplay side, like up and down and things. Like I get used to the isometric, but it's very much trying to pay homage to the 3D games while also operating in a 2D space. And I will say, the grid is actually pretty lenient. Like obviously the game's on a grid, but you don't move like your steps, or you're not moving from like one square to the next. You've got a little bit of wiggle room. So like sometimes I can be watering my crops and maybe I'm standing a little bit too close on one square. And so I actually missed a row of crops because I was standing a little bit too close. Like either the sub pixels, I guess. You got more freedom of movement in here than you would expect for a top-down D-pad kind of thing. He doesn't move diagonally.
Yeah. I do like the fact you said sub pickles because you can't grow cucumbers.
Mm-hmm.
Or just pickles.
Pickles in general, yeah.
Pickles in general. But when it comes to, I would agree with almost everything you said there. But like the frame, in terms of the frames of animations for all the characters and so on and so forth, like it's not bad. But I don't think that that's the point of what you're getting into a Harvest Moon for. You're not trying to go into Harvest Moon expecting a visual tour de force. Like you look at Stardew Valley, and I have not played Stardew Valley for what it's worth. And it looks like it has great pixel art, but you wouldn't say it's among like the most visually stunning games, an example of cutting edge technology either. And that's because I think these games thrive in just a minimalist environment. Like the less you have going on in the screen at once is probably for the better. You don't want all these other things to be clouding up your screen when there's so much to manage. So I think the more minimalist approach to what this game was doing graphically was a wise choice, even though I think it was more forced in terms of what they were dealing with in terms of a hardware limitation.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have those limitations on the N64 and PlayStation 1. And like you said, it's an homage, it's a remake. It's trying to go to those versions for inspiration and have a similar look and feel to it. But the limitations made them change up the way that they gave it to the player. And it's overall for the better, even though you compare it to Golden Sun. I'll take Golden Sun every day over this.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's not going to disappoint you. But again, you have to think of what the game's trying to do from a gameplay standpoint. And when you realize that if they tried to make it anything more than what this is, it's kind of defeating the point of where the hook is in terms of execution gameplay wise.
Yeah. And I will say, like, for a Game Boy Advance game, there is a lot that they really, I think they ought to be commended for if you were saying the hardware limitations. PlayStation and N64, they got a lot more buttons to work with. Game Boy Advance, you've got 4. You've got the A, B,
L, we didn't talk about that.
Like,
oh yeah,
it's got some tight. I mean, it's just part of just the gameplay thing. Like the UI in this thing is clean. But what they did to make up for the button limitation was, well, let's just combine buttons together. So you can, in the N64 version, like you had to press start, navigate to the rucksack screen, open it up, watch a loading screen, then get your thing, loading screen out. Here, yes, you can open the start menu and it opens instantly. You can pan over to your rucksack. There's an entire slate of things that you can do, but open it up, or you could just press A and B together. Boom, it's open. You double press A to move stuff to the top of the queue. Or what they would do is you cycle your tools by holding down L and A or L and B. L and A cycles your rucksack, L and B cycles your tools. And you can also hold, after that, you can do left and right to go forward or backward. Other things, like you can immediately bring up the farm map by L and select. That's your farm map. And it shows you your entire grid of what you have planted, where all your animals are, where the harvest sprites are, where your dog is, your basket, everything. L and start is just the town map, the mineral town valley. You can do all of this from the start menu, as well as look at like your earnings reports and everything, which is just a select push. But I think they really did a good job of combining buttons together in a mostly intuitive way. I had to look at the manual, or like I didn't figure out the A and B press. That was just by accident. I was like, holy crap, I can do this.
Yeah.
But that is a key thing that they brought from Back to Nature of being able to cycle items and tools like that. You couldn't do that in N64. That was a Back to Nature innovation.
Yeah, and it's good when it works most of the time, but sometimes I found myself, especially low on stamina, when I'm trying to swap a tool, and then, it can be really bad when you accidentally sickle a plant or
an animal.
or an animal.
You can cut your animals.
Because you're trying to swap your weapon and just...
Yeah.
Yeah, you're trying to swap it, and it's like, no, you're going to perform the action. I'm like, oh, God. That wasn't good. That does happen from time to time.
From time to time.
Yeah, you're right. In terms of... It's innovative considering how few buttons you do have. Because, yeah, L, R, A, B... Two fewer buttons you got on the Super Nintendo, which even if you go back then, yeah. And you're right, everything is clean. Everything, the way it presents, the map is clean. I want to see it on a little screen to see how it looked, but it like the way it did present itself on an emulator, it was easy to see. It wasn't difficult to understand where everything was, how everything would be, and that's what you want out of a game. So I will say, in terms of visual presentation, it's good. It's good.
Very solid.
Yeah, it's appropriate. I think that's the best way I can put it. It does what it sets out to do, and it's appropriate in what it's trying to execute. And it doesn't really need to do more. And I'm perfectly fine with it. Let's go to sound. And now, usually when people say sound, the first thing they get to is the soundtrack. What's your thoughts on the soundtrack?
So first off, yes, the soundtrack is indeed rather limited. Basically, every season has its own theme. Mineral Town has its theme. I think that's pretty much it. You have festivals and things like if you go through the OST track of Mineral Town, it's surprisingly limited. Now, this can be expanded. Again, one of the A Wonderful Life with you connected to the GameCube. This would unlock an item called the record player. There's a guy called Van. He's a trader. Like Trader Joe's, Trader Van. So he basically sells you the record player and the record, so you can play tracks from Harvest Moon SNES on your farm. You can play, they had the SNES games in like the 3 Game Boy Color games is what they had. And so that changes it up a little bit because other than that, you just have the one season theme is what you got. But I think it undersells it a little bit because the themes that are there are solid. They're good little tunes. They don't sound like they're not obnoxious far than. I think what I'm trying to say is I respect that with what little they had to work with and the seasonal themes, they're very memorable. They stick in my head. I can hum them at any time. They're good, solid songs, but you're not losing anything if you don't have the sound on. I will say the one thing about the sound design that would drive people crazy or who would be listening next to me is your steps have a very specific sound. So you're all walking around and it's wop, 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 wop. If you're going through the menus, it's little chirps. And when you make a selection, a chicken goes. So it's like wop, 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 blank, cheep, 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 it's and then your animal sounds. If there's anything that will kind of grate on you after a while of extended play, I'd say it's the animal sounds and menu navigation. Because the soundtrack is fine, but the sound design, I understand. Like I remember multiple instances of my parents going, please turn it down. Just please. Or sometimes I would turn the music up really loud when I'm playing and managing animals because the cows, for some reason, is like the moo is the loudest thing in the game. The cows mooing is just like they're just screaming into the microphone.
Thankfully, I didn't get any cows then. So there's a plus.
Yeah.
I didn't have to worry about that.
It's charming, but it's not charming if you are on the receiving end and not playing the game. It's like, what is this guy doing?
Right. So as for the soundtrack, I thought that the soundtrack was good as well. I thought that the tracks were good. You better get used to hearing them. I would have appreciated if the town had a theme that changed.
Yeah.
Because that stays the same no matter what the season is, and you're going to have to go into town almost every day. You don't have to, but for the most part, you're going to. I also would have appreciated if the mines had a different soundtrack just to vary it up. Because there can be seasons where you're in a certain season, as I was for like a long time. You can spend 20 to 30 minutes per day. Mm-hmm. And there are 30 days per season. So, I mean, you do the math on how long some of these days can last. And yeah, you're going to hear those tracks a lot. They're not obnoxious, but over time, I'm like, I don't want to hear this anymore. I don't care.
You almost kind of tune it out after a certain point.
You have to, because if you don't, you're going to go crazy. And in fact, it got to the point where I was playing this, I would put almost anything else in the background just so I didn't have to listen to the music anymore.
It's an amazing podcast game. Yeah,
it is. It is a great podcast game. You should probably play it while listening to this, maybe, and get some tips. But or the backlog for the Treehouse Anime Club and what will be coming out there. Go ahead and listen to it. As far for the sound effects, it didn't bother me, and I think that's usually a good sign of a good sound effect. I didn't really notice the walking sound too much. I think that the sounds for actually hitting a tree, with your axe could have been more animated, because sometimes I wasn't sure whether I was hitting it or not. Same with, when the hammer would hit a rock. I don't think there's that much of a difference between using a hammer and when a hammer would hit something.
There is
or using an axe. That kind of sucks.
Yeah, when you charge it up, it's a little bit of a more like a thunk. But if you're just doing a single press, there is no sound difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want to know whether or not you're hitting these things because they take multiple hits to do, and they take up a lot of stamina. So you're going to want to know whether or not you're hitting these obstacles with your tools. That's not a good sign. I mean, you're going to, if it breaks, you're going to know, especially if you're upgrading it. But the one sound that I was like, I hate this. I hate this every single time I go into a menu and I save and I exit out. It sounds like you're kicking a damn dog.
Oh, yeah.
Every single time you cancel. Like, I'm like, no, stop. Stop it. Stop. I just want to exit the menu. Why are you yelling at me? This is not a terrible thing. You want me to stay in the menu? You want me to turn the game off? Like, I don't want to hear it, man. I don't want to hear this like dog sounding like it's crying. Like, what's wrong with you? Who thought that was a good game design choice by making it sound like a dog was getting kicked across a room? I don't like that. The chicken's not so bad. The dog? What? Your dog never makes that sound. Where do they get that sound? It's terrible.
Oh, yeah, it's bad.
You're going to hear it a lot. Unless you, again, turn the volume off and listen to a podcast in the background. Yeah, sound overall is okay. Just don't exit a menu, which I guess you kind of have to do.
Yeah.
Or just have something on in the background because, you're going to hear a lot of the same tracks over and over and over and over again. That wraps it up for the categories that we normally talk about on this show. And now it's time to get into what we think about this game and if it holds up today. But before we do, we get into a section called our patron pontifications, which is where our patrons let us know what they think of the episode that we are talking about right now. And they do this either in the Discord or on our Patreon. And all patrons can do this no matter what level you're on. So if you're interested in providing your thoughts into a game or topic that's coming up on an upcoming episode, whatever we happen to do, go ahead and join our Patreon over on our link tree, which I will give the links in the episode description, or you can just keep on listening until the end of the episode and hear it there. And we are going to be starting out with Lyle, patron Lyle, who says, man, what a game. Moons. Harvesting. Apparently a whole town made of minerals. Never played it. And after your ringing endorsements for the last 3 hours, that's unlikely to change. Smooches. Thank you, Lyle.
From Lucas, Game Over Hill over on YouTube. I can't remember exactly why, but this game didn't hold my interest for long. Some fans of the Bokujo Monogatari series swear this is the best entry, but I couldn't tell you why. Maybe you will with the episode's discussion. I said this before in other Bokujo/Harvest Moon discussions. I think the series peaked with Animal Parade on the Wii, and no motion controls aren't required, which, yeah, Lucas, I agree. I really enjoyed Animal Parade. Jumping back in, with coincides with Animal Parade being the final entry the original producer had an influence on, and I ended up losing interest after playing the second Story of Seasons game because the series seems to have lost all its ambition. I heard the remake that came a few years ago is supposed to be good, but I'm guessing they're still afraid of giving NPCs their own potential families, still since Marvelous thinks players get sad when they steal bachelors/bachelorettes from NPCs, confirmed by Exceed employees. So go check it out at your own risk. Was this pontification an excuse to rant about the series losing its pair of balls? Yes. I will. That is one thing we didn't really talk. There is a rival marriage system in this game, and they took it out for all later games. And like I said, Exceed was like, "Oh, people didn't like that we had rival marriages." Well, one thing, if you're past year 4, that's the only time it's going to trigger. So if you get married before year 4, then that's fine. Then everybody else gets married, Guess what? Everybody else starts having kids. Their schedules change. You get new cutscenes. What's the downside? It's a whole new dynamic to the game that I've only ever experienced like twice because I've only ever had 2 games go past year 5 ever.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, like I said, as soon as I got married, it was over.
Yeah.
And I saw some of the rival scenes within the first year.
They're like to spur you on. And yeah, the panic, I'll tell you, as a kid, the panic is real when the girl that you're going after is, like Anne and Potpourri kind of get a pass because that one's very specific, and then Potpourri's doesn't really come until the summer. But like Ellie and Karen, those guys are right there in the town. You better watch your step because they'll steal your girl.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I get it, but I've always been of like, if I had control of the series, one thing I would say is just make it a toggle it on and off. They have difficulty settings now. Just toggle on bachelor rival marriages. Mm-hmm. Done. So yes, I do agree with him that the series kind of lost its balls with that aspect.
Yeah.
David's rant over.
I'm not an in-depth person into the series. I agree with the toggle as someone like they did with Fire Emblem. They can do it with Harvest Moon. Why
exactly.
Not? It's a life simulator. You're supposed to be involved in it. That's how this works. All right. Next is Alt. And Alt says, my cousin owned Harvest Moon for the Game Boy Color, I believe. At the time, I wasn't against farming games. They were fresh experiences. And honestly, without Harvest Moon, I'm not sure she and I would have gotten into Pokemon as hard as we did. I'm not sure what the differences are between all of them, but knowing that Natsume Harvest Moon games aren't real Harvest Moon games nowadays is such a weird concept to accept. Seeing Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town is such a weird-ass world to live in. I'm not really into farming sims nowadays, but I do remember playing the GameCube game and getting a wife and child. And then I lost the child somewhere. Or was it the dog? Well, anyways, I've always liked the concept of the life sim. I prefer the style that Room Factory took and clones of that where they introduced combat portions. A lot of this stems from getting frustrated at time restriction in games. Hi, Persona 5. I know I'm currently playing you. But knowing Harvest Moon is basically what set folks up for Stardew Valley and the current farming simulator oversaturation, much like the 2002-2010s. Zombie oversaturation, you really have to tip your hat to the series. I know I haven't really spoken about this game, but truthfully, I don't know if this mimics the Game Boy Color game my cousin had, or a portable version of the GameCube game. I need to look up some gameplay at a later point and see if it jogs my memory besides losing my dog and or child. Maybe it was both. Side note, bring back Metabots, Natsume, you cowards.
Oh, that's a deep cut. Wow. I haven't thought about Metabots in a hot minute.
I think I'm too old.
Yeah. All right, next up we have Lunchbox, aka The Disgruntled Gamer, Thunderdome Gaming Society on YouTube. Ah yes, Harvest Moon. I've known about these games since the SNES days. I have never played one though. I'm not a crafting or farming game player at all. Now, if you had to defend your farm from invaders with guns, explosives, and various sharp things, I might play it. I respect the franchise, and hey, if you enjoy it, that's cool, man. Gaming is gaming.
Hear, hear.
Huzzah.
All right. Next is Randall. And Randall says, Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town was how I worked up the courage to talk to my middle school crush. Oh, wow. I played a bunch of different games on the GBA, but this one a girl was playing. I genuinely think that games like Harvest Moon and Animal Crossing opened the door for a lot of people who would have otherwise never touched video games.
Aww.
Thanks, Randall. I agree. I agree with them. It's kind of like The Sims for console players.
Right. This is actually how when I knew that we were going to be doing this episode, I actually reached out to my sister because she got into gaming. I wouldn't say it was exclusively Harvest Moon, but Harvest Moon did have a big influence on her getting into gaming as a whole. So she had like a Barbie game and then Harvest Moon, more Friends in Mineral Town. And I was always slightly miffed that she always got the definitive version of whatever game that I was playing. Any kind of bugs or glitches were always patched out in her version.
Yeah.
It was a way for her to enjoy a low stakes game, no platforming challenges, no things for her to get stuck on at her own pace. And now she has a way better gaming PC rig than I do. She'll go like 5 games into like Baldur's Gate 3 or something. So yeah, Harvest Moon for both of us was kind of like our entry point to really discovering gaming beyond our little niches. So yeah, I feel that story especially. All right. Next up, we have Ozzy, who says, as a huge fan of Back to Nature on the PlayStation, I knew I was in for trouble when there was a version of Harvest Moon on the GBA. As expected, the game, despite having more simplified graphics, managed to capture that same addictive day-to-day loop that has made the series absolute crack. My greatest memory of it is traveling to California for the first time, GBA in hand, and going into the early hours of the morning, staring at the non-backlit GBA piece, man, and getting just one more day in. It was cozy and nostalgic experience that I still view with warm colored hues. Thank you, Ozzy.
Great memories.
It's a great road trip game as well. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Next is Soha, who says, I was never really interested in farming games. Never got into Harvest Moon back in the day and had no interest in trying any other ones coming out ever since. I do remember that one Nintendo Direct where Square Enix and other companies announced like 4 different farming games.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys can convince me to give farming a try. Perhaps what I need to build my character is hard work and a waifu. You're right.
A waifu's a nice perk. Yeah, you're right.
It is a nice perk. It is a nice perk, Soha.
And is best girl.
And is best girl. Ellie's number 2.
She is. She was my number 1, and then Anne supplanted. As I got older, Anne supplanted her.
Yeah. Mary never. I don't understand that archetype. I understand it's an appreciated one, but not for me.
Yeah, I appreciate her archetype, but also she and Gray are just so cute as a couple together that I couldn't take away Mary from Gray. She did get quite the glow up in the remake though. So I was like, oh, I considered it, but there's also no rival marriages, so nothing's stopping me. Anyways.
Go for it. Get many wives.
Yeah, get more of them. Everyone else is just going to remain single and lonely forever.
All mine.
We need a toggle. Bring back rival marriages. I don't care. Raging Demon says, Harvest Moon is a game that I never played, but my wife likes it, and she is awesome, so it must be a good game by the transitive property. Farming in reality is a really hard fucking job, and not chill or cozy gaming or whatever people say it is these days. Thanks, farmers, for doing the job. I don't want to. Absolutely. Very well said.
Very well said. And lastly, Sega Boy 7, who is a new patron, thank you, Sega Boy, says, while I haven't played Friends of Mineral Town, I played the shit out of the original Super Nintendo Harvest Moon. I got my Super Nintendo super late in its lifespan, and Harvest Moon was one of the few games I was able to buy brand new for it. I did everything you could do in it. Yes, it's a farming sim, but it's a damn good one. You're damn right. And I think that game came out like 1997. I have to take a look, but it came out really late.
98 is when the series began. Yeah, 98.
That's wild.
It may be 98 in the USA. It may be 96, but it's in that time range.
Yeah. I know it came out super late for it. It still blows my mind. Like a series that is like, I think I would consider this to be a very well-known series starting like pretty much when the console's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And just having that like a year later is on the PS1 and N64 as a semi big deal. Speaking of big deals, we're going to get into our opinions because we are the big deal here on this show. But thank you, patrons, for your pontifications. As for what we think and whether or not this holds up today, I'm going to go first, and then our guest will give the final word as we are wont to do. And I say, yeah, absolutely, this game holds up. It's a fucking Harvest Moon game. I don't know if there's a single Harvest Moon game that I have played, which isn't many, to be fair, that doesn't know what it's supposed to do in terms of its formula. I do understand that somewhere along the way that it did start to forget what it was supposed to do. Thankfully, I've not played those games, and I don't know the whole entire story there. That's an entirely different podcast or YouTube video or whatever you want to watch. There's a story behind that. Not a story of seasons, but God, we've already used that. I've used that pun and it's too literal. But in terms of what this game tries to accomplish, if you're looking for a good portable experience, Harvest Moon, Friends of Mineral Town does everything it's supposed to do correctly. And I'm sure the remake is fantastic. I'm sure Harvest Moon DS is fantastic. I'm sure Harvest Moon. Oh, it's not.
Okay. It's Harvest Moon DS. Sorry to cut you off there. Harvest Moon DS is basically
fine.
They took Friends of Mineral Town and slapped it on the DS, and they took. It's the first time they started to get fiddly with the formula, and it didn't quite. A lot of just weird stuff was happening.
That explains why my wife lost that cartridge when I got it for.
Also, well, yeah, the DS Cute, which was the girl version, fixed a bug. On the Harvest Moon DS thing, I encountered a glitch and a bug, and I could never get past it. One of the mines was just locked out. They forgot to code in the thing that would let you progress the game. And two, you would randomly see, other quirks aside, you would randomly have my entire field would turn into artifacts. So my entire field got locked out. And it just,
oh no.
It was one of those, I looked up, I didn't have a bad copy. That was just in the game, and it was always a chance to happen in the winter. And it happened to me every winter. So my game was rendered literally unplayable. So no,
Okay.
Harvest Moon DS, I do not consider a good game. No, fuck that game.
No, so don't play Harvest Moon DS. Let me refocus the focus on Friends of Mineral Town and just say, yes, it holds up. It has the same crack-addictive formula that I experienced with the Super Nintendo version of Harvest Moon, the same one as Back to Nature, the same one as Harvest Moon 64, which I have played all of those, and I can tell you they are very addictive as well. So if you're looking for a really good version of a farming simulator that's not called Stardew Valley, and you want to see where the roots of what I would say, based on reputation, what has been perfected by that game and where it started, this is where you want to go. Now, if you really want your farming sim, if you really want to get your farming sim rocks off, yeah, probably Stardew Valley is where you're going to want to go nowadays. But this is the OG. And if you can put up with that, it's a very good game, all things considered. So that's my position on whether or not this game holds up. And Dave, take the stage. Let us know what you think about this game, whether or not it holds up today.
Well, like I said a couple of times already in the episode, this cartridge, I've been playing the same cart for 20 years. It's not consistent. It's like once every couple of months. It holds up, and it's one of those, if you're a fan of the Game Boy Advance and you have not played this game, this is definitely one that is I believe it's a must pick up. This is, if you were talking about classic Harvest Moon, yes, Harvest Moon SNES is right there, the original. If you want to see like where the roots, like you said, of the series, like of true classic Harvest Moon, this is like where they really started to move the series forward. This is, if I was to give someone like a first like classic Harvest Moon to go to, I would Friends of Mineral Town, no question. Even the remake is a very faithful redone. The things that they add are very minimal. It's a very faithful, almost like a 1-to-1 remake. If you want to play it on the Nintendo Switch, there's extra options for there. But Friends of Mineral Town, again, it's just a solid Harvest Moon. It does everything good that the series is known for, and then some. Yes, I will say like Stardew Valley is right there for classic 2D, but that's one of those, like, we're talking, to make a very weird analogy, Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town is almost like Mario 64, where Mario was really going into pushing his series forward in that new way. But if you go back and try to play Mario 64 now versus like your modern Marios, it's a little clunky. Things have certainly been improved. The biggest improvement, I would say, to get the remake over this one is item stacking in your rucksack. You don't have to, it's less fiddly. You have more options, but this is just quintessential classic Harvest Moon. When you talk about classic Harvest Moon, there's a reason that this has 6 different versions out. They really had a winning formula with this. Mineral Town, I can remember, I've played, again, the entire series back to front, and Mineral Town is the setting, the characters. I can remember every little detail about these people. That other games have really good villagers, but there's just something special about Mineral Town, man. It's just, it just never misses. It just keeps hitting. I love this game.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, thank you everybody for listening to this episode, and I hope you just take a look at Friends of Mineral Town if you've ever considered playing a Harvest Moon game. It's the best place to start if you want to play Harvest Moon, straight up. And if like Dave was saying, go play the modern remake, because everything I've seen in facts, this is pretty much like the exact same game you can get on your Game Boy Advance. It's probably more affordable, all things considered.
It's certainly more
and
affordable,
more easily
yeah.
accessible. Yeah, and more easily accessible for sure. And again, like I kept on saying, like I never really had a payoff to it, so I'll pay off now about how popular the series is. Look at all the patron pontifications that we had regarding this game. If you had told me that Harvest Moon was a popular series that people were invested in, like I would have to pause and really question it. But when you look at a community, understand we're still a niche community. We're more on the probably outside of what gaming is. I mean, I know we have some Call of Duty gamers in here and some more mainstream gamers as you can imagine, but they're like the community really likes Harvest Moon, and there are games that I thought would be more popular that we've had in the past that got way less of an interaction. Like, this is an important series and this is an important game, and I think a lot more people are playing these types of games than you would imagine. It's so heartwarming to see the reaction that a game like this, a series like this gets, especially a series like this that I truly love, and I'm happy to talk about it. And I'm happy to talk about it with someone who loves this game so much. So thank you, Dave, for stopping by the show to share your experiences with this game, to share your thoughts about this game, just being here to have this conversation today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. This is, again, it's a very special game, and I wasn't sure, again, how the response was. Like, reading through all the patron comments, it is certainly a series that people have had a lot of nostalgia for, and I'm glad to see that on display in not just Mineral Town, but the series and farming games in general. It's a niche you don't think about, but there's a surprising amount of people who do play and enjoy these games. You know, you can think of it's easier to think of like a series like Animal Crossing because Nintendo has a full on like promotion and everything, but Harvest Moon's always been kind of like that quiet little thing doing its own, the quiet little game doing its own thing in the corner. It's not a flashy series. It's not a flashy title. You're not going to go away remembering like, oh man, I can't believe I did this awesome thing in the game. It's just a steady drip of good old fashioned homegrown dopamine, man.
100%.
They've made an entire very successful franchise for the size of it. There was a mention of like the Rune Factory series. I think after Stardew Valley, yes, Harvest Moon has had, and Story Seasons has had to, it's been fighting an uphill battle. And I think they need to step up their game a little bit more. It is a little sad to see them kind of go more to the flashier Rune Factory series, but it's also like even Rune Factory owes its roots to Harvest Moon in the end. All things lead back to it. And so, yeah, never count out the little guys, never count out the quiet games that just give you a nice little bit of just good old time wasters. I wouldn't be playing these games if I thought they wasted my time. I've been very fulfilled playing Harvest Moon and Friends of Mineral Town in particular. So yeah, it's a very nostalgic game. It gives you the cozy feels, and it's just a solid little title.
Also, Ashton, who is editing this episode, I know that he is a big Harvest Moon fan as well. Unfortunately,
oh, is he?
Yes, he was slated to join us for this episode originally, but he is too caught up in the life things, as occasionally happens. But next, I would like to give once again the floor to Dave to let people know where they can find you on the internet. And once again, thank you for stopping by. But let people know where they can find your old hotness, your new hotness, all the things in between and outside of that hotness.
So yes, once again, I am an anime podcaster. I started podcasting very recently, just in 2023, with a little show called The Treehouse Anime Club. I thought it was a whimsical little title, a little bit of fun. I talked about anime and anime production, a little bit of the history, talked about the people, and I did what I needed to learn, like, hey, I can podcast. I really kind of like this. You know, as it is, life caught up with me and decided I needed to take a break. And during my break, I still kept writing. And I made the decision to change it up a little bit, but I am coming back on April 1st. And by the time this episode goes live, I'll have an episode out of, hey, here's what the podcast is. But the new project is going to be called the Anime Field Guide. So once again, I will be talking about anime, production, and the fine folks who make it all possible every month or so over on the internet. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at Annie Field Guide, so ANI Field Guide, all one word. You can also find me on Blue Sky under Annie Field Guide. And if you want to get in contact with the show early, I'm over on animefieldguide@gmail.com. I'm going to have a whole listener segment and everything. But yeah, the Anime Field Guide will be the new podcast I'll be dropping on April 1st. I hope you check it out. And the Treehouse Anime Club, my old show, is still up on Spotify and all of the places. It's still up there. Never took it down, and I never will take it down. And you can check that out. But yes, I hope you check out the Anime Field Guide. I'll be doing new episodes once a month, and I hope you come along for the journey.
Look forward to it. And congratulations on getting the Anime Field Guide off the ground. I know you've been talking about it for a while. I know you shared it in the chat to me like in September. You've been working very hard on this. So look forward to seeing what you're having to put out there, because the Treehouse Anime Club, if you want to know about the production of anime series, just not what Dave's thoughts are, but like everything about the production, the origin, like soup to nuts on these series. If you're an anime fan, he does a very extensive, in-depth look at these, and if you have a favorite anime that he covered, you're going to definitely love and appreciate it. So go check that stuff out, and that's why I'm so excited about what he's having coming out for anime fans here in the future. As for us, the Retro Hangover Podcast, if you're here, you probably know where to find us, so thank you. If you want more information about what we do, just head over to our link tree, which is at linktr.ee/retrohangover, where you can find links to all sorts of stuff that we do, all the social medias, all of the stuff like that. And that includes the Patreon, which you just heard people give their Patreon notifications, which you can sign up for as little as $1 a month. And currently, at the time of this recording, when this episode debuts, the King of Games 1999 is going on the Patreon. And you can listen to that exclusively there until it's over. And then you can listen to it on the main feed. So maybe you're just biding your time. If that's what you want to do, that's 100% fine. But hey, you do you. We also have other stuff like rapid fire reviews. We have IO Saturnalia, and we also have a radio show, music show that comes out once a month. It's all there. I'm not going to go into detail. But yeah, just go check that out if that appeals to you. But other than that, check us out on our Twitch and YouTube channel. We stream there every Sunday at 9 p.m. I don't know why I'm asking this in the form of a question, but maybe you can, I don't know. Maybe I'm ashamed of it. Maybe I'm not. You can find out why if you go stop by there and subscribe to our YouTube channel or our Twitch channel, which is also in the Linktree. But if you don't want to go to Linktree because that's old, just head to twitch.tv/retrohangover. We are not an affiliate. We don't run ads. We don't do any of that garbage, mostly because we're too lazy to. Head on over there. We will see you Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. We'll hang out and discuss very inappropriate things, as I always describe. Just imagine something very inappropriate now. I don't have anything at the top of mind at the moment. That's about all I have to say. So with that being said, that's the end of the episode. Thank you all for joining us. And until next time, play with your tickle my butthole with that blue feather joysticks. Bye, everybody.
Thank y'all for listening. Stay safe and watch more cartoons.
Shane here with a quick message. You know, the one rule Chris and I have always gone by regarding advertisements is this. It has to be something we use and can personally vouch for. If you know me, you know I love coffee. And Bones Coffee Company has been my go-to for home brewing for quite some time now. Their small batch beans come in an impressive variety of flavors like Mint Invaders from Chocolate Space, or Electric Unicorn, which I swear tastes exactly like Fruity Pebbles. And the best part? No added sugar or calories involved, just natural flavors infused right into the beans themselves. Build your own sample pack of 5 4-ounce bags to find out which flavors speak to you, or jump in head first with full 12-ounce bags. They've even got K-Cups. Step up your homebrew game with Bones Coffee by visiting bit.ly/RHPBones. That's bit.ly/RHPBONES.